Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa polisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ng kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, Service Through Policy Research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga pulisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga pulisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan din ng kahalagahan ng pulisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies or PIDS has been the country's foremost socio-economic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Welcome to the PIDS webinar series. Before we start our virtual event, we have some reminders. For attendees, your microphone is automatically muted upon entry. If you wish to join the discussion, click the Q&A icon, type your question, and click Send. For Facebook viewers, you may send your question using the comment section. Remember to keep your questions concise and direct to the point. We will screen all questions to ensure that they are relevant to the webinar topic and the presentation. The moderator will read the questions during the open forum and cover as many as possible depending on the available time. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed on the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. The recording will also be made publicly available on the PIDS YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your active participation.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Welcome to the PIDS webinar series, a platform where we feature our policy studies and the insights of government policymakers and program implementers, industry experts and practitioners, scholars, and civil society actors. Through this virtual interactive series, which we started in 2020, we hope to provide an accessible venue for evidence-based discussion of current and emerging development issues. I'm Sheila Siar, your host and moderator. For our event this afternoon, we'll talk about the full devolution agenda in the Philippines, which was mandated under Executive Order 138 in view of the broader share in the national revenues of our LGUs as a result of the implementation of the Mandanas-Garcia Supreme Court ruling. We will determine the current state of devolution in our local governments and their capacity to assume the devolved functions under Section 17 of the Local Government Code of 1991. How ready are our LGUs for the full devolution? And is the target completion date of 2024 still feasible? What measures are needed to help our LGUs absorb the devolved functions with ease? We'll answer those questions this afternoon. To start our conversation, let us listen to the opening message of Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr., the president of PIDS.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today for another PIDS public webinar. This week's theme is Propelling Devolution, Assessing Local Governments' Units' Capacity and Challenges, in partnership with the Department of Interior and Local Government and the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department. First, allow me to greet the following officials: Action for Economic Reforms President Jessica Cantos, Asian Development Bank Executive Director and former PIDS Research Fellow Charlotte Justine Jokno-Sikat, Climate Change Congress of the Philippines Board Member Mark Amor, Department of Health Director Francis Rose Mamaril, Department of Science and Technology Director Romeo Ompoy Jr., League of the Cities in the Philippines and Deputy Executive Director Mickey Monterde, Local Government Development Foundation Deputy Executive Director Antonio Avila, University of San Carlos President Father Narciso Silian Jr. I would like to greet those watching through our PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages, especially those from government agencies, local government units, academe, civil society, and media. In recent years, the decentralization agenda in the Philippines has gained momentum due to two significant events. Firstly, the 2019 Mandanas-Garcia ruling by the Supreme Court declared that local government units, or LGUs, should receive the rightful share based on all national tax collection. This ruling effectively bolstered LGU funding and enabling them to deliver improved public services. According to the Department of Budget and Management, Local Government and Regional Coordination Bureau, the Mandanas-Garcia ruling will substantially impact fiscal capacity of both national and local governments. Effective from January 2022, the transition is expected to be completed by 2024. Secondly, to support the increased resources available to LGUs from their share in the national taxes and empower them to provide essential services and facilities to their constituents, the Duterte administration issued Executive Order 138. This order mandates the full devolution of functions to LGUs, following the spirit of Republic Act 7160, also known as the Local Government Code of 1991. In preparation for the complete devolution, concerned national government agencies, or NGAs, and LGUs were required to submit devolution transition plans, or DTPs. These plans aim to facilitate the transition of devolved functions currently performed by NGAs. As stated in EO 138, LGUs are expected to prepare their DTPs in close coordination with NGAs, and these plans will serve as a guide for monitoring and assessing the performance of LGUs by Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, and Department of Interior and Local Government, or DILG, and the relevant NGAs. Today, we are featuring the study Baseline on the State of Devolution Pre-Mandanas Philippines by PIDS consultant Marianne in Juco, Senior Research Specialist Ricxie Maddawin, and Dr. Palomar, and Research Analyst Miral Ruiz, and former Research Fellow Justin Juco. This study, which PIDS did in partnership with DILG, evaluated the DTPs of the LGUs to establish a baseline of the current devolved functions of local governments and their capacity to absorb additional functions. Joining us to provide valuable insights are House Committee on Local Government Chairperson and Negros Occidental 6th District Representative Mercedes Alvarez, Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines President and Quirino Governor Dakila, Carlo, and DBM Systems and Productivity Improvement Bureau Director John Aries Makaspak. We are also honored to have DILG Undersecretary Iringan and Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department Director General Dr. Romulo Miral Jr., who will share their special messages. We thank DILG and CPBRD for partnering with us in this public webinar. I encourage everyone to have an open and inquiring mind while listening to the presentation and discussion, and to participate actively in the open forum. Again, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today.
You've heard the message of the President of PIDS, Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr. We also have messages from our event partners, the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department, or CPBRD, and the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG. At this point, let us listen to Dr. Romulo Emmanuel Miral Jr., Deputy Secretary General of the CPBRD. Dr. Miral has been with the government for nearly 3 decades, spending most of it at the House of Representatives Secretariat. His professional interests include public expenditure management, national government budgeting, tax policy and administration, and intergovernmental fiscal relations. He obtained his bachelor's degree in economics from the University of the Philippines and his PhD in economics from the Australian National University. Dr. Miral, sir, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Sheila. Good afternoon, everyone. It has almost been 33 years now since the enactment of the Local Government Code, and various studies show that government decentralization reforms have at best yielded mixed results. It cannot be denied that some degree of administrative and political authority have indeed moved from the center to the regions, and some local governments have had remarkable accomplishments. However, the desired overall and significant transfer of power and resources from the national to the subnational tiers has not yet been attained, and as such, neither have the concomitant qualities of local governance, namely efficiency, responsiveness, and accountability. We know of the Gantimpalang Panlingkod Pook, or Galing Pook Awards, which provides awards to programs on innovations and excellence in local governance. It has given recognition to programs initiated by local governments in the delivery of devolved functions, such as health services, environmental management, and local revenue generation. However, efforts to popularize the winning programs have not resulted in substantial adoption by other local government units, except for some local governments which have instituted innovative and effective practices in local services delivery. There is still considerable room for improving service delivery across local government units. In 2 separate studies by Diokno and Lianto in 2012, they both view with concern the creeping recentralization of health and social welfare services as manifested in the increasing budgets of the Department of Health and the Department of Social Welfare, and the declining share of local government expenditures in these two major devolved services. Thus, they underscore the importance of clear delineation of functions and responsibilities between national and local governments and greater local fiscal autonomy to promote accountability. The 2018 Mandanas-Garcia ruling of the Supreme Court, as we know, has pushed the reform of expediting and deepening the devolution of government functions and responsibilities to LGUs in the top agenda of the government. The Supreme Court ruling implied a substantial increase in the mandated share of LGUs in the national budget and reduced budget shares for national government agencies. And amid spikes in the budget deficit and national debts brought about by the COVID pandemic, the national government expenditures would have no choice but to pursue in the medium term, the downscaling of their key programs, activities, and projects, especially relating to functions and responsibilities devolved to local government units more than 30 years ago. Under the 2023-2028 Philippine Development Plan, the government will pursue the strategic delineation of functions, structure, and staffing of national agencies and LGUs. The DBM and the DILG will play crucial roles in expediting the transition of national government agencies into capable policy development and oversight bodies that can provide sound and timely service delivery standards and capacity development intervention for LGUs. Meanwhile, the Philippine Development Plan also expects that LGU will fully absorb key functions and responsibilities such as local infrastructure, planning and development, and contribute more to the realization of health and education outcomes. It envisions stronger LGUs that are responsible and accountable for delivering infrastructure and other development outcomes within the respective jurisdictions. However, it should be pointed out that as various studies based on international experiences have shown, autonomy by itself is not sufficient guarantee of improved governance and service delivery. Government services are diverse and complicated. They have both national and local dimensions that require coordination and cooperation among players at all levels. For national and subnational local governments to achieve harmony and effectiveness, they have to forge relationships based on a clear division of responsibilities, which in turn should be made operational by adequate funding and bureaucratic capacity. The establishment and use of credible, timely, relevant, and consistent performance indicators that will make local governments accountable is also vital. Monitoring and evaluation of performance not only of local government units but also of national government agencies in the context of phased devolution of government functions would need to be improved and intensified. Monitoring and evaluation systems need to be in place to be able to measure the impacts of devolution transition initiatives on the quality of life of citizens, in addition to tracking the efficiency and effectiveness of public service delivery by national government agencies and LGUs. Monitoring and evaluation systems with a capability to measure, track, and evaluate national and local government performance need to be institutionalized, and the data, information, and insights that they generate be used systematically to guide planning, budgeting, and continuous improvement and execution of national government and local government programs, activities, and projects for greater development impact to achieve the expected Philippine development results. Considering these foregoing arguments, it is my great pleasure to commend the Philippine Institute for Development Studies and the DILG for conducting this study to establish a baseline of the current devolved functions and capacities of LGUs. I'm sure that we will have a very lively and interesting discussion this afternoon. So again, without further ado, let me thank you all and welcome you to this knowledge sharing session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you as well, Dr. Miral. Would like to inform all of you that we have reached 1,000 participants here in Zoom, which is our maximum for our platform. So for those of you who were not able to join, who were not able to enter Zoom, you may join via Facebook. You may watch the live stream on our Facebook page, and it is also being broadcast on our SERPI community page. Okay, so at this point, let's listen to the message of Engineer Mario Iringan, Undersecretary of Local Government of the DILG. A civil engineer by profession, Undersecretary Iringan applies his design and systems thinking in assisting local governments. He began his government career as a barangay government operations officer in 1989. Then he became a director in 2010 and later as Undersecretary of Local Government in 2021. We have this message from Usec Iringan.
Isang magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. First, please allow me to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr., the President of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, our longtime partner in doing valuable studies on local governance, and Dr. Romulo Emmanuel Miral Jr., the Director General of the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Board of the House of Representatives. Also, I would like to acknowledge our discussants this afternoon, the Honorable Mercedes K. Alvarez, Chairperson of the House Committee on Local Government, and representative of the 6th District of Negros Occidental. Of course, we have the President of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines and the Governor of the Province of Quirino, Governor Dakila, Carlo, and Director John Aries Makaspak of Systems and Productivity Improvement Bureau of the Department of Budget and Management. To all the participants now in this session, good afternoon once again. Over the years, our department consistently supported our local government units through initiatives and interventions on improving local governance in the areas of planning, service delivery, and participatory governance. Moreover, we also have collaborated with key development partners to come up with policy and capacity development interventions and recommendations to improve delivery of basic functions and services of local government units. As such, at this time, please allow me to extend our appreciation and recognition to the PIDS as one of our partners in conducting studies to improve local governance capacities, especially for the accomplishment of the first phase of the study on the state of devolution in the Philippines. This study has been the department's 8th project engagement with the PIDS, a bountiful partnership that has produced valuable insights into local governance. This study is a timely addition to the pool of reference materials in shaping the local governance landscape, as it presented key recommendations on the strategic implementation of the Supreme Court ruling and identified the gaps or areas for improvement for delivery of functions pursuant to the Local Government of 1991 and other special laws passed thereafter. As we envision a more expansive LGUs, additional information from studies like this can provide empirical basis as a reference of the national government in developing policies to strengthen local governance and direct national government interventions towards this goal. We are confident that this earnest effort will go a long way towards sound implementation of programs and projects by and between the national government and the local government units. Consistent with the current administration's priorities, and especially with the directive of the President to further review Executive Order 138, this study will be useful in reviewing and determining challenges and opportunities for the LGUs as active and effective partners in the pursuit of national development. We can only achieve our goals if we develop and implement policies that are truly reflective of the realities in our LGUs. Certainly, this session with all of you will help achieve this goal. Again, on behalf of the Department of the Interior and Local Government, We would like to thank you for your continued support towards better local governance. Umaasa kami sa inyong walang sawang tulong at suporta para mas matugunan natin ang pangangailangan ng lokal na pamahalaan, pati na rin ang pamahalaang nasyonal na pagtagumpayan ang mga hamon sa mga panahong ito. Maraming salamat at mabuhay kayong lahat.
Maraming salamat din po, Usec Iringan, and also to the ILG for your continued support to PIDS. After hearing the messages of our president and our event partners, which set the tone of our discussion this afternoon, I think everyone is ready to listen to the presentation from the study baseline study on the state of devolution in the Pre-Mandanas Philippines, which as mentioned by Dr. Orbeta, is authored by Marianne Juco, Ricxie Maddawin, Robert Palomar, Mark Ruiz, and Dr. Justin Diocnosicat. The presentation will be delivered by Ms. Marianne Juco, a consultant of PIDS. She is a PhD candidate at the UP School of Economics, where she also obtained her master's degree. She obtained her bachelor's degree from Ateneo de Manila University, and she is an alumnus of the London School of Economics and Political Science, where she received her certification in public policy analysis. Her research interests are macroeconomics, public sector management, and agricultural economics. Joining Marianne is her co-author, Ms. Ricxie Maddawin, a senior research specialist at PIDS. She has a master's degree in public policy from the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies in Japan, and a bachelor's degree in statistics from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Her current research involvement is in local governance. Ladies, the virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you, Ma'am Sheila. So good afternoon, everyone. Before we start the presentation, let me thank our co-authors, Mr. Robert Palomar, Mr. Mark Ruiz, and of course, Dr. Justin Sicat for their valuable contribution to this study. We would also like to acknowledge the support and guidance of Dr. Marifé Ballesteros and Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr., and the help of Ms. Lucy Melendez, Jocelyn Almeida, and Christine Salazar in the process of the project. Lastly, this study would not be possible without the help of the DILG SLG PPMO, headed by Mr. Richard Villacarte and his team, Mr. Glenn Miranda, and Ms. Regina Pilandas. Thank you very much. So today, we will be presenting the study on the state devolution in the Pre-Mandanas Philippines. So I will start the presentation and will pass it to Ms. Marianne Juco for the results and recommendations. Next slide, please. So the flow of the presentation will start with the background of the study and objectives, followed by the methodology, and then the assessment of the three subsections, starting with the state and trends of devolved functions, then the phasing of devolved programs, projects and activities, or the PPAs, and lastly, the assessment on the capacity development interventions needed. After the results, the key takeaways and recommendations will be presented. Next slide, please. The Philippine government was highly centralized for more than 4 centuries. It has a long tradition for political administrative centralism before being challenged by the 1987 Constitution and the Local Government Code. Philippine decentralization efforts may be traced back to the first Philippine Republic from 1898 to 1902 with the provision of local economy to provinces. This was followed by the American regime from 1902 to 1935, where the local government was placed under military control and moved towards centralization. So from 1946 to 1986, there have been 5 attempts to empower the 4 levels of local government in terms of political and administrative authority, just before the 1987 Constitution. However, during the martial law in 1972 to 1986, efforts toward decentralization were constrained. Following the martial law period, the 1987 Constitution was introduced with a general provision indicating that Congress shall enact a local government code, which eventually led to the 1991 Local Government Code. In the current years, decentralization efforts has significantly jumped forward as the Mandanas-Garcia Supreme Court ruling, or the Mandanas ruling, attained its finality in 2019. So this decision effectively increases the tax base for intergovernmental fiscal transfers or the national tax allotment. Since the finality of the Mandanas ruling, national government oversight agencies and fiscal policymakers have been contemplating how to best ensure a well-planned and smooth implementation. So with this, the Executive Order number 138 in the 2021 was issued to provide guidelines for the effective transition of functions and responsibilities to LGUs. The EO also includes the design and review of the devolution transition plans, or the DTPs. Next slide, please. So given the state of devolution in the country, some uncertainty arises on how LGUs will manage the devolved functions and whether the prescribed devolution transition period is sufficient. Hence, the main objective of this study is to establish the current state of decentralized LGU functions, services, and capacities, specifically to examine the proposed phase assumption of devolved functions, to identify gaps of assistance needed to assume the devolved functions, to identify how decentralization can be deepened for LGUs, and to identify how the delivery of devolved services can be improved towards the attainment of national goals. So with this, the results of this review and assessment could guide policymakers and could be the basis of the following: further examination of the LGU needs, trigger the revisiting of the LGC and provisions of the EO 138, and prompt rethinking of the rational planning or the CDP process. The results of this study could also be used as a baseline for monitoring and evaluating progress in devolution. Next slide, please. So for the methodology, this study used the submitted LGU devolution transition plans, or the DTPs, from 76 provinces, 142 cities, and 300 municipalities, and concentrated on the social welfare, health, agriculture, environment, disaster risk reduction management, and infrastructure sector. Moreover, the data used for this study were generated from only the 3 annexes of DTPs. That is the data from Annex E, F, and G. The Annex E is for the state of devolved functions, services, and facilities. The Annex F is for the phasing of full assumptions of devolved functions, services, and facilities. And the Annex G is the Capacity Development Agenda, or the CAPDEV. Next slide, please. So the study was able to review the 76 provincial DTPs, 142 city DTPs, and sample of 300 municipality DTPs out of 1,373 municipalities, excluding LGUs from the BARM. So the sampled municipalities were stratified according to LGU income classification so that each income class is represented. So the sampling breakdown is as follows. Next slide, please. Okay, so from the collected DTPs, the study observed some limitations. So for the data limitations, there's lack of standardization or no clear classification of identified devolved functions into PPAs. For example, the structure of the templates may have left too much room for the interpretation of the LGUs. There were parts of the templates that are left blank, or there was an error in the submission of the LGU into the DILG system, such as missing attachments or duplicating files. The study also pointed out there's lack of complete detailed list of functions and the current status of devolution. We observed that there are terminologies used in the templates that are similarly defined across LGUs. However, there are also some terminologies used in the templates that are not consistent across LGUs. There's also no measurement of the quality of the current devolved services. And there's also the absence of the national government agency DTPs as a benchmark, and ambiguous data or no data entries for the year of full assumption, funding, resources, requirements, and etc. So with these limitations or challenges, the study points out some recommendations for the DTP templates and the data collection, such as that there should be direct guidelines relating to the filling out of the templates to ensure consistent and complete information. There's a need for the LGU DTPs to align with the national government agencies DTPs, And the study also recommends to explore for alternative solutions to improve the consolidation of collected DDPs. Next slide, please. So from the reviewed DDPs, this is the summary of observed LGU PPAs per sector. As you can see, the majority of the listed PPAs of the LGUs are in health sector. Most of the PPAs listed by the provinces are under the health sector and agriculture sector, while most of the listed PPAs of the cities and municipalities are under the social welfare sector and health sector. Next slide, please. So for this section, let me now pass the floor to Ms. Marianne to present the study's results, key takeaways, and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricxie, and good afternoon, everyone. I will now be presenting the findings from our assessment of the DTP data, starting with the state and trends of devolved functions. So here are the main findings from the analysis. First, the study team finds that the rationale behind how LGUs identify their devolved functions is unclear. Second, there is an evident variation across provincial sectoral priorities. And third, there is also an evident variation between city and municipal sectoral priorities. So here, what you can see are heat maps, or the average number of devolved PPAs identified by the LGUs in their DTPs that they submitted to DILG. So the darker color pertains to regions with more devolved functions per LGU, and lighter colored areas refer to less number of existing devolved functions. Next slide, please. Here is a summary table on the number of devolved PPAs segmented by LGU capacity and performance. We find that around half of the LGUs in the study belong to Quadrant 1, or high capacity, high performance, and these account for around half of all PPAs being devolved. Meanwhile, around 1/4 or 25% of the LGUs in our data are classified as low capacity, low performance. That would be Quadrant 3. And the remaining 1/4 is split between Quadrant 2, low capacity, high performance, and Quadrant 4, high capacity, low performance. Next slide, please. Our first main observation is the unclear rationale behind how LGUs identify devolved functions. So the study team tested various hypotheses, such as devolved functions being driven by the ERA or the NDA. We asked, do high ERA recipient LGUs also identify more devolved functions? And what we found is that there's a weak correlation between the number of devolved functions and the ERA. Next. For the health sector in particular, the team tested the hypothesis of whether devolved PPAs are driven by population density, and we found weak correlation at the province level. And we also found a considerable variation in PPAs assumed by the provinces, with darker areas having assumed more devolved functions. Next. For health sector at the city level, there is also weak correlation between assumed devolved functions and population density, and high variation across cities. And next. And we make the same observation for the health sector at the municipal level. Next slide. For social welfare, the team compared areas in the country with high poverty incidence, depicted by dark red areas in the heat map to your right, to the number of devolved PPAs. So we expect that high poverty areas would also have corresponding high number of devolved PPAs for social welfare. And while we see this in some areas, as highlighted by the arrows, it is not the case for the other high poverty areas, especially in Eastern and Central Visayas and in Mindanao. Next, please. For agriculture, we compared areas with high agriculture gross value added. These are the dark red agricultural regions to the right, with the number of the devolved PPAs, and we observe high variation across provinces, cities, and municipalities. We explore more of these variations in the succeeding slides. But before moving on, we would like to note that without the NGA DTPs, with the exception of DOH, as when we were writing this report, it was difficult to benchmark and determine the reason behind the differences that we observe across different LGUs. Okay, next. Moving on, the second main finding is that the provinces have distinct sectoral and functional priorities represented by the devolved PPAs that they have identified. So for agriculture, there are 4 main functions assigned to the provinces, and we find that different provinces prioritize different functions. For example, credit and marketing services have been prioritized in Central Luzon and Davao. That's the upper left graph, heat map, and dairy farms and insemination centers are more pronounced in, sorry, next slide. There. For credit and marketing services, this is the upper left heat map. And then for dairy farms and insemination centers, they are more pronounced in South Luzon. This is the lower left heat map. So for the succeeding slides, we will not go into the details of which functions are prioritized where, but what we want to highlight is that there is a variation across what provinces prioritize, as illustrated by the heat maps. Next slide. So for environment, we observe inter-province variation, but this is expected since not all provinces have the same geography. So for instance, highly urbanized provinces would have less devolved natural resource management functions compared to less urbanized provinces. Next. We make the same observation for social welfare. For example, provinces in Luzon have devolved more PPAs for relief operations. That's the upper right graph. While the lower left graph, we see Central Luzon and Gensan having more devolved PPAs for rebel returnees. Next. For infrastructure support, provinces from different regions also signal differing priorities represented by the dark blue areas. Next. And finally, we make the same observation for the RRM sector. Okay, moving on, the third main finding is the variation in functional priorities across cities and municipalities. So on this slide, we present the heat maps for the different health sector functions. We will not discuss the details, but we want to highlight again the varying trends per function. And for a detailed discussion of the variation, you may request for a copy of our paper, and it is discussed in detail in the paper. Okay. So what we will show you from here on are the heat maps for the different functions per sector. So this is a continuation of the health sector functions. Next, these are the functional priorities for agriculture, and we see again a variation across cities and municipalities. So this is for agri. Next, for social welfare priorities. Next. For environment, there is still considerable variation. For DRRM, there's also considerable variation in the devolved functions. Next, and finally, infrastructure. Hence, we conclude that there are different priorities as represented by the PPAs being devolved across cities, across municipalities, and even if we compare between cities and municipalities from the same provinces, they have different priorities as indicated by the PPAs. We find that these findings can be useful to inform NGA DTPs or for an assessment of what should be versus what is currently being devolved. Okay, moving on, next we present the findings on the phasing of the devolved PPAs. The data used for this section is based on the self-assessment of LGUs on their forecast completion date for each function. So the study considers the latest year provided in the DTP as the year of completion. We present completion rates per function, which is the share of LGUs that project full devolution in a given year. Hence, the completion rate for each function is interpreted as the percentage of LGUs with full devolution for a given year. Next. We have three main findings. First is that based on LGU forecasts, none of the functions devolved are expected to be fully devolved by end 2024, which is the target in EO138. Second, we observe a noticeable jump in completion rates from 2023 to 2024, and we will illustrate this in the succeeding slides. And third, there are missing data, or LGUs were not able to provide the year of completion for a significant number of devolved functions. And this is especially true for the RRM functions. Next. So for the devolved functions to provinces, we find that at most 80 to 90% completion for health, that's the leftmost set of graphs, and some agricultural functions by 2024. There is a visible jump from 2023, which is the orange bar, to 2024, the gray bar. For example, for health services, which is the leftmost bars, in 2023, only 20% of the LGUs indicated expect full devolution of health sector functions. That's the orange bar. But this jumps to 80%, the gray bar, in the following year. So for some functions also, we note that some LGUs were not able to provide the completion date for some functions in their DTPs, as indicated by the no data indicator. Next. We established the same trends for cities, but in addition, we note of the higher projected completion rates for social welfare functions relative to other sectors, such as agriculture. Next. Here are the completion rates for health, environment, and DRRM devolved functions to cities. We take note of the missing data for DRRM. So some LGUs did not indicate their forecast for full devolution for these functions. And the same trends are seen in the infrastructure sector. Next. Finally, we established the same observations for the devolved functions to the municipalities. And again, we find a relatively higher completion rates for social welfare functions relative to the other sectors. Next. For health sector functions, the jump can be seen from 2023 to 24. And then there's another jump of completion from 2024 onwards for the health sector devolved functions. Next. Again, we take note of the missing data for environment and DRRM functions. So this is the data from municipal LGU DTPs. Next. Finally, here are the completion rates for infrastructure functions devolved to municipalities, and the same trends apply. Okay. Finally, in this section, we present the capacity development interventions needed by LGUs to support their devolution efforts. So we adopt DILG's capacity development framework, which defines 6 pillars that are essential to effective service delivery. These are structure, competencies, management systems, enabling policies, knowledge management, and leadership. And in the DTPs, the LGUs were free to identify their needed inputs or interventions for each pillar. So these are classified by the study team into 6 categories, namely hiring of personnel, guidelines, monitoring and evaluation, procurement of equipment, trainings, and technical assistance, and others. So we make 5 cross-cutting observations First is that the heavily identified need of LGUs is the hiring of personnel or increase in plantilla. Second, this increase in personnel is to be supported by trainings and technical assistance. Third, LGUs also identify the need for monitoring and evaluation tools. Fourth, fewer LGUs identified the need for acquisition and procurement of equipment or construction of facilities as a needed intervention for devolution. And fifth, LGUs provided a limited listing of CapDev needs for DRRM and infrastructure functions. Next slide. So here are spider diagrams for the CapDev needs for social welfare services for provinces, cities, and municipalities. So the diagram plots the number of LGUs that have identified an intervention needed for each of the 6 pillars. So for example, for the structure pillar, if we look at the graph for the provinces, 70 provinces have indicated a need to hire personnel. So that's the light blue line. The provinces also indicated that trainings, which is the purple line, are needed for competencies, but also for leadership and knowledge learning pillars. Now, guidelines and consultations represented by the orange line are needed interventions for enabling policies pillar, leadership, and competencies as well. So we find the same needs across provinces, cities, and municipalities. For the health sector, the same needs are applicable for provinces, cities, and municipalities. Next. Here are the CapDev needs for agriculture. And again, it's basically the same trend of what is required for each pillar. Next. Again, for the environment sector, it's the same needs, capacity development needs. Next. Now, for DRRM, we want to highlight that there is a majority of the LGUs that have not identified any CapDev needs for them to perform the devolved functions for DRRM. So this is represented by the dark blue line. None means if there was no data provided in the TTP as to DRRM interventions needed by the LGU. So a significant number of LGUs did not identify any CapDev needs for DRRM for provinces, cities, and municipalities. Next. And there is the same trend is also seen for the infrastructure sector, but it's more pronounced only in the cities and municipalities. So for cities and municipalities, no interventions were identified for the 6 pillars for the infrastructure sector devolution. Next. Okay, so to conclude, we highlight the study's main takeaways. First, the unclear rationale on how LGUs prioritize devolved functions stress the need for greater guidance from NGAs. Second, the consistent pattern of under-identification of DRRM functions and missing data indicates a need for greater guidance on DRRM. Next. Third, based on LGU projections, none of the devolved functions are expected to be fully devolved by end 2024. Fourth, most needed CapDev interventions are personnel, training, guidance and consultations, and monitoring and evaluation tools. And next. Fifth, supplementary data collection can provide both qualitative and quantitative support to our analysis and findings. Next, finally, key recommendations of the study are as follows. First, a greater role of coordination from national to local can help improve planning and implementation of the LGU DTPs and devolution in general. Second, the heat maps presented earlier illustrate varying needs and priorities of LGUs, and so decentralization may not be a one-size-fits-all, and an asymmetric approach may be beneficial. And third, a mechanism for collection of data can help government evaluate the progress and effectiveness of its decentralization efforts in the future. So that ends our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Marianne and Ricxie for that comprehensive presentation. I already saw some questions in the Q&A box regarding the study, but we will entertain them during the open forum. And for those of you who would like to have a copy of the discussion paper where you can see the full results and recommendations, you can download them. You can download the study from the PIDS website. We typed the link in the chat box. And you can also refer, or you can also go to the PIDS website and find the study. Okay. Before we jump to the next part of the program, let us have a short break by knowing the pulse of our audience, by knowing what you think. So we are inviting all our participants to join our poll. So at this point, may I request our webinar team to flash the question? Okay. The question is, are you in favor of the full devolution of public services to our local governments? Or in Filipino, sang-ayon ka ba sa ganap na devolusyon or full devolution ng mga pagpublikong serbisyo sa lokal na pamahalaan? Yes or no, or oo hindi? And to join the poll, you may scan the QR code on the screen or click the Mentimeter link in the comment section of Zoom and Facebook. Okay, so, okay, nakasagot na ba kayo? Okay, so at this point, can we, may we ask our webinar team to flash the results? Let us look at the results. Okay, and the results reveal that, okay, so majority said yes, okay? So majority are in favor of the full devolution of public services to our local government units. Okay, so thank you for participating in our poll. Let's leave that for now. And at this point, let us listen to the insights of our discussants. First to share her views. Her views on the topic is none other than Congresswoman Mercedes K. Alvarez, representative of the 6th District of Negros Occidental and the chairperson of the chairperson of the House Committee on Local Government and vice chairperson of the Committees on Appropriations, Legislative Franchises, and National Defense and Security. Congresswoman Alvarez has represented the country in several international gatherings, and in 2014, she was elected as member of the board of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians representing the Asia-Pacific during the 131st Interparliamentary Union Assembly in Geneva, Switzerland. The following year, she represented the Philippines at the Global Youth Forum of the United Nations Economic and Social Council and the IPU Global Conference of Young Parliamentarians in the Japanese Parliament. She holds a bachelor's degree in arts from Assumption College, a bachelor of laws from the University of St. La Salle, and a master's degree in national security administration from the National Defense College of the Philippines. Let's give a big virtual clap for Congresswoman Alvarez. Ma'am, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. I hope I can be heard. I'm
yes,
here right
ma'am.
now. Yes, maayong hapon sa tanan from the island, the sugar island of Negros Occidental. Of course, I'd like to greet Dr. Orbeta, Dr. Miral, Usec, Iringan, DBM Director Makaspak, and my former classmate in Congress, Governor Dax Kua. Maayong hapon, good afternoon to each and everyone. Before anything else, I would like to thank the PIDS, the DILG, and the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department for giving me this opportunity to provide my insights on the baseline study on the state of devolution in the Pre-Mandanas Philippines. As chairperson of the Committee on Local Government, I express my commendation to PIDS for this timely study that would aid, of course, the Philippine government as it moves forward to fully devolve certain functions of the executive branch to our LGUs. As such, I fully agree with the key findings and recommendations in the study, and I have a few comments thereon. First, the clarity and conciseness of the DTP's forms cannot exceed, of course, the knowledge and capacity of LGU employees and officials tasked to fill out the said forms. As what PIDS recommended, and to which I fully agree, it is significant to collect a comprehensive list of baseline indicators, especially at the LGU level, to facilitate, of course, a proper monitoring and evaluation of the devolution agenda in the country. Accordingly, LGU officials and employees themselves must be knowledgeable about the LGU's current functions, particularly the functions that will be devolved, the professional development programs that they have undertaken and need to undertake, and of course, the national tax allotment of the LGU, and how much is spent over the programs, projects, and activities involving the devolved functions, among others. Indeed, having baseline indicators can help provide these information. I believe that LGU officials and employees' knowledge is vital, especially when participating in the orientation on how to fill out the DTP forms. This is because, notwithstanding the conduct of orientation, if they lack knowledge about the information just mentioned, the results will stay the same. Information is power, as we all know, and we have to maximize the opportunities to collect them. Well, as one takeaway, personal takeaway, I hope the DALG will take advantage of the upcoming barangay elections, that if there will be new sets of barangay officials, maybe they take advantage of conducting new seminars on how to inform them on how to do about this. Because I have heard in some LGUs, yung tendency po minsan is that medyo copy-paste lang po yung DTP forms from other LGUs that have complied with it. So this cannot be done because each LGU is different from the other. Secondly, with the current state of devolution in the country, there is a need to revisit the devolution transition period. The study revealed that none of the provincial, city, and municipal LGUs reported meets the 100% full devolution target by the end of 2024. This sentiment is not new. Even the DBM stressed that ample time would be necessary for the implementation of the transition to ensure the effective and efficient delivery of devolved functions, services, and facilities. Relevantly, more time is needed to fully prepare and capacitate LGUs to implement the devolved functions, services, and facilities. This must be an eye-opener to the national government because it already echoes the indirect sentiment of our LGUs to extend the devolution transition period and to continue to capacitate them to appropriately implement the devolved functions. Thirdly, we have to promote and develop LGU academic partnerships. According to the study, an effective evaluation of decentralization in the Philippines requires a systematic data collection of baseline information on the LGU's current authority, fiscal accountability, capacity, information use, as well as baseline indicators on social outcomes. Aside from the stakeholder analyses, key informant surveys, household surveys, and facility surveys, among others, it is my view that this is the best time to develop LGU academe partnerships. In the event that we have attended, Local Government Unit Fellowship on Social Cohesion and Resilience by Galing Pook, which my office attended last June 19, the LGU Academe Partnership has been greatly stressed by participating LGUs, as there is a need to value public research and ensure that our LGUs have access thereto. The academe plays a vital role in providing on-the-ground evidence and strategic tools that can help improve the policies on devolution. Fourth, in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, or VUCA environment, and with the discussion on the fifth industrial revolution, procurement of equipment and infrastructure development should go hand in hand with the capacity development of LGU employees and officials. We have to harness the use of existing technologies and professionally develop people at the same time. Based on the studies, the fifth industrial revolution prioritizes greater collaboration between humans and machines through cyber physical systems and technologies. I personally hold the position that the human-machine collaboration may result in more effective and efficient devolution. Finally, while devolution is not a one-size-fits-all approach, it requires the oneness among the national government, the local government, and the citizens to be effectively rolled out. Devolution cannot be successful when it is only done by the national government and the local government units. And this has been proven in other countries. One good example is Kenya, where according to the World Bank, a significant portion of public finances and responsibilities for service delivery in health, agriculture, urban service, and local infra was rapidly devolved to 47 new county governments in less than a year, instead of over the planned 3-year transition period. The practice in Kenya created a window of opportunity for the more bottom-up engagement, where the government is free to share information, consult the public, and regularly gather citizen feedback. Hence, there is a need to strengthen public participation on devolution. With public participation, we are promoting accountability and improving local service delivery. So thank you very much to everyone, and I hope we all continue to work together to ensure the success of devolution in our country. Salamat din.
At maraming salamat din po, Congresswoman Alvarez, for your very insightful remarks. Thank you very much for emphasizing the importance of collaborating with the academe in gathering local data, which could help in refining local policies, as well as in stressing the importance of using technology, of harnessing technology for better delivery of public services, as well as the importance of enhanced public participation in the devolution process. Okay, maraming salamat, Representative Alvarez, and we're very honored to have you in this webinar. Okay, our discussion this afternoon will not be complete without hearing the views of our local governments. And with us today to give his reactions in his official capacity as the President of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULAP, is Governor Dakila Carlo. Governor Kua is also the National Chairperson of the League of Provinces of the Philippines and the Governor of the Province of Quirino. He has been in public service for over 2 decades. He started in 2001 as the country's youngest Vice Governor at the age of 23. He served for 2 consecutive terms as Quirino's Vice Governor and was later elected Governor. From 2010 to 2019, he became a congressman, during which he served as chairperson of the House Committees on Ecology and Ways and Means. In 2019, he was again elected as governor. Under his leadership, the provincial government of Quirino was awarded the Seal of Local Good Governance by the DILG for 6 years. Governor Kua graduated from the University of the Philippines with a bachelor's degree in business administration. Governor Kua, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Ma'am Sheila, and to the men and women of PIDS and CPBRD, and of course, the Department of Interior and Local Government, to the very dynamic and intelligent Congresswoman Cheds Alvarez, my classmate. It's good to see you, ma'am. Sa inyo pong lahat, mga fellow local officials and employees of the local governments, good afternoon. First of all, I apologize for if there's some background noise or music. I'm in a public coffee shop as I wait for another meeting. I would like to thank you all for inviting me and the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines to this public webinar entitled Propelling Devolution, Assessing Local Government Units' Capacity and Challenges. And I would also like to commend the PIDS, or the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, the DILG, the CPVRD, for organizing this important event, the topic of devolution and the assessment of local government units' capacity and challenges is of utmost significance in promoting effective governance and local autonomy. Likewise, commendations uh, to the comprehensive approach taken by the study of PIDS consultant Marianne, Juco, senior research specialists Ricxie, Maddawin, and Robert Hector Palomar, and research analyst Mark Gerald Ruiz, and former research fellow Charlotte Justine Jokno Sikat, which evaluated the LGU's devolution transition plans and established the baseline for the current evolved functions and capacities. The findings highlighting the varying priorities and capacities among LGUs and the challenges posed towards achieving complete devolution by 2024 are crucial for informed policy making. Recognizing these facts, that LGUs have varying capacities as well as challenges faced in the implementation of EO138, your ULAP itself has recommended a shift from a devolution-centered to a service-oriented approach to the Mandanas Garcia ruling. Currently, ULAP is actively engaged in a collaborative effort with the Department of Interior and Local Government through the Honorable Secretary Benjamin Abalos to meticulously develop the intricate details of this approach. And so we are very excited to have read up on PIDS' paper assessing local government units' capacity and challenges and gain additional insights into the state of decentralization. In the light of the current state of decentralization in the country, there is growing uncertainty regarding the ability of LGUs to fully assume all devolved functions and whether the designated transition period is adequate. First, the study shows that there is significant variation among LGUs in terms of their prioritization of devolved functions and their capacity to handle them effectively. Why? Obviously, it's because not one local government is the same with another. Their priorities vary based on the needs, goals, aspirations, and challenges of their constituents. For instance, my plans for my home province, Quirino, would be significantly different from that of, say, Batanes or another one of the 81 different provinces of the nation. Hence, imposing a one-size-fits-all, as called out by Congresswoman Alvarez, solution or program is not the way to go. As I've always pointed out on various platforms, we must realize that over-prescription on local government units tend to stifle creativity in service delivery. We must veer away from generic solutions and come up with solutions that fit the needs of each LGU. We have to be reminded of the idiosyncrasies of each LGU by veering away from omnibus policies and programs and start shifting to a data-driven, scientific, and research-based service delivery approach, as reflected by the study of PIDS as well. Secondly, the self-assessment of LGUs in the study indicates that achieving complete devolution by 2024 is not feasible within the given time frame. The truth is that there appears to be a disconnect between 2 points of view. On one hand, we have the national government trying to ensure that there would not be any corresponding diminution in the delivery of public services, or even ensure improved service delivery, even as its spending on its own account is reduced due to the effect of the ruling. While, on the other hand, LGUs know that full devolution has been in place since 1992 and are now baffled at how the LGU can undertake all the additional functions relegated to them by about 20 different national government agencies while still being able to improve service delivery for their constituents and their current service deliveries. However, these points of view coincide in one goal, which is improved service delivery to the Filipino people. Ultimately, what both national and local governments want is improved service delivery to the people. Hence, the proposal of ULAP to the national government. Thirdly, the study highlights an important finding regarding capacity development interventions for supporting the devolution agenda. It reveals that these interventions predominantly emphasize manpower and training requirements. However, it is essential to recognize that local governments may require more comprehensive support beyond manpower and training alone. For instance, in today's rapidly evolving digital landscape, local governments need to adapt to digital governance practices to enhance the streamlining of processes and services. This obviously entails the establishment of physical and connectivity infrastructure that enable effective digital implementation. Without the adequate infrastructure, the full potential of digital governance cannot be realized, hindering the efficient delivery of services and the monitoring and evaluation of programs. In short po, instead of forcing everybody to go digital and online, we need to invest in the necessary infrastructure of connectivity for the public. Aligned with these findings in the study of PIDS is ULAP's proposal to go beyond simply devolving functions to LGUs. Instead of simply transferring national programs from national government agencies to all LGUs in response to the Mandanas-Garcia ruling, your Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines advocates for empowering LGUs to become active and capable partners in nation building. This entails enabling LGUs to enhance their service delivery functions, ensuring responsiveness to the specific needs of their constituents. What this means is that we should focus the additional resources received by LGUs from the Mandanas-Garcia Supreme Court ruling to improve service delivery at the local level. This improvement should be based on the unique needs, priorities, and aspirations of each LGU. The underlying principle is that local governments, being closest to the people, possess the ultimate knowledge necessary to determine what their constituents truly require for their well-being and their progress. For example, let us consider a scenario where a national government program is designed to address a specific concern that affects only a portion of the local government unit. In such cases, it would be more effective and efficient to empower those specific LGUs that are directly affected by the issue rather than implementing the program across the more than 1,500 provinces, cities, and municipalities indiscriminately. Our approach should be data-driven and scientific, such that programs are implemented based on data of local government units. This approach recognizes the inherent variation among LGUs in terms of their priorities and capacities, as highlighted in the study. It acknowledges that each LGU has its own set of local circumstances, challenges, and opportunities. And by allowing LGUs to determine their own path based on their unique contexts, we foster a more decentralized and responsive governance framework. This empowers LGUs to be proactive in identifying and addressing local issues, leading to more effective outcomes and better utilization of local resources. In essence, the goal is to leverage the Mandanas-Garcia Supreme Court ruling's additional resources to promote local autonomy and decision-making, enabling local governments to pursue their own plans and aspirations that are aligned with the needs and goals of their respective constituents. To do this, we have to first determine the essential services that local governments have to carry out, such as in the realm of health, welfare services, infrastructure, etc., many others, like agriculture, and determine the scope and scale by which these services are to be carried out. Should they be carried out by the national government agencies, or by the provinces, or by cities and municipalities, or by our barangays? The key is to unbundle the services to the degree that is necessary to apportion the components of broad functions between the stakeholders involved in service provision or production in an exclusive manner. It is also important to consider the concept of complementing and supplementing roles of and for each level of government. At the end of this exercise, ULAP's objective is not only to identify the essential services that LGUs need to undertake, the appropriate forms in which they should be delivered, and the specific level of LGUs, whether barangay, municipal, city, province, should be responsible for them, but also to establish comprehensive service delivery standards. These standards will serve as benchmark that LGUs can refer to in order to ensure the provision of high quality public services. Additionally, ULAP, with the support of the Department of Interior and Local Government and other stakeholders, hopefully also PIDS and CPBRD, hopes to be able to develop service delivery indices accompanied by baseline data to evaluate the progress and achievements in terms of service delivery. These indices will provide a quantitative measure of the quality and effectiveness of public services across different sectors and different local governments. The service delivery indices will enable policymakers in national government or in Congress and stakeholders to identify areas where LGUs excel and areas where additional support or intervention may be necessary. By analyzing the indices, it will become evident which local governments require complementing or supplementing support to enhance their service delivery performance. This targeted approach ensures that resources and assistance are directed to the areas that need it the most, maximizing the impact of interventions. We hope to be able to work with the Philippine Institute for Development Studies in navigating the transition from a devolution-centered approach to a more service-oriented approach, recognizing the expertise and research capabilities of PIDS. This collaboration would greatly contribute to the development of effective strategies and framework for improving service delivery and governance. Ultimately, the goal is to transform local governments into proactive agents of change, actively contributing to the attainment of national development agenda. And this requires providing local governments not only with the necessary resources and support, but also the autonomy to improve their service delivery mechanisms and effectively address the unique challenges and opportunities within their respective jurisdictions. By doing so, local governments can become key drivers of progress, working in harmony with national agencies to achieve sustainable and inclusive development across the Philippines. Again, thank you and good afternoon po. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat.
At magandang araw din po sa inyo and maraming salamat Governor Dax Kua. Great to have you again in our webinar, sir. Thank you very much for emphasizing the importance of empowering our LGUs by focusing on improving service delivery at the local level based on the needs of their constituents, no? And you advocated very important that you mentioned the need to advocate context-specific approaches and not a one-size-fits-all solution. And thank you also for telling us about the initiatives of ULAP with regard to the full devolution process. Marami pong salamat, sir, and we hope to have you in our open forum too. Okay. Our last discussant is from the Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, which chairs the Committee on Devolution. We have with us today Director Aries of the Systems and Productivity Improvement Bureau of the DBM. As head of the Bureau, he spearheads the review and enhancement of the policies related to the full devolution of functions and services to LGUs, which is among the current administration's priority measures. His office also formulates policy standards and guidelines on management systems, improvement, public sector productivity enhancement, management of government assets, and strengthening of internal control systems in government. Director Macaspac also serves as a resource speaker on local budgeting and expenditure management matters. Director Macaspac, sir, you may proceed.
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Dr. Sheila. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate and thank the Philippine Institute for Development Studies for conducting this study in assessing the local government units' capacity and the challenges, of course, in relation to the implementation of the devolution of functions and the services to the local government units. And I would also like to greet my colleagues in the national government from the DILG, Usec Iringan, then of course the other invited guests, Dr. Miral of the CPBRD, and my fellow reactors, Congresswoman Mercedes Alvarez and Governor Dax Kua. Good afternoon to each and everyone. So my reaction will focus on the key takeaways and the recommendations contained in the study. And I would also like to take this opportunity to share the DBM's initiatives and programs to facilitate a successful administrative and fiscal decentralization to the local governments, and the DBM's insights on how to address the identified challenges in the implementation of the devolution of functions and services to the local government units. With regard to the key takeaway, particularly on the need for baseline indicators, at the outset, we would like to share with you that pursuant to a recent directive from the President, the oversight agencies, namely the DBM and the DILG, with the DOF and the NEDA as the lead, together with the Committee on Devolution created under Executive Order number 138, are currently conducting further study on the full devolution of functions and services to the local government units based on their respective absorptive capacities. Specifically, the assignment of responsibilities, programs, and projects between the national government and the LGUs shall be reviewed to determine the need to extend the initial full devolution transition period from 2022 to 2024 and ensure the effective and efficient delivery of public services. Upon completion of the ongoing study or review, the oversight agency shall recommend the necessary updated policies to govern the full devolution effort, and thereafter, the local government units and other stakeholders shall be accordingly informed and guided on these policies. So pending the completion of the study and cognizant of the varying levels of expertise and capacities of the local government units, the provision of continuous capacity development interventions and the formulation of a long-term capacity development strategy and program for the local government units by the national government shall continue to be pursued to enable the LGUs to fully assume and effectively perform the devolved functions and services and ensure that they will be able to fund and sustain the delivery of these services and functions on their own. As mentioned in the study, the baseline indicators generated could serve as substantial inputs to other studies that will be conducted to assess how the full devolution effort is going and how it can be steered towards the overall national goals and development plans. So in view of this, the collaborative effort of the national government agencies concerned, the LGUs, our development partners, the academy, and other stakeholders in the conduct of necessary and related studies is seen as a pivotal step in moving forward to ensure or to support or aid in the formulation of policies to more effectively transition to the full implementation of the devolution. Now, as an additional note, one of the future plans of the DBM is the conduct of an impact assessment of the implementation of this full devolution effort of the government, as directed under EO number 138. So we highly appreciate this effort of the PIDS to generate baseline information on the state of the devolution in the country on which future studies could be taken off. Now, another key takeaway, the guidance from the national government agencies. Consistent with the pertinent provisions of the Local Government Code of 1991, the primary role of the national government is to perform its steering functions over the local governments, which include the setting of the national policy, the development strategy, and the prescription of service delivery standards in the delivery of basic services and functions. So the improved coordination of national government policies and programs and the extension of adequate technical and material assistance to less developed and deserving LGUs shall be facilitated. On the other hand, the local government units are expected to endeavor to be self-reliant and shall continue to exercise powers and in discharging the duties and functions currently vested upon them, including the functions and responsibilities of national government offices and agencies devolved to them under the Local Government Code of 1991. In particular, the LGUs shall exercise powers and discharge such other functions and responsibilities as are necessary, appropriate, or incidental to the efficient and effective provision of basic services and facilities. The non-completion of all national government agency DTPs within the prescribed time frame is recognized. Nevertheless, it is worthy to note that coordination between the national government agencies and the LGUs has been emphasized in the government's full devolution effort pursuant to the LGC and EO number 138, not only to ensure alignment of DTPs, but also in terms of the delivery of the devolved functions and services and increasing the capacities of LGUs to undertake these functions and services, particularly in Section 2, Item C of EO number 138, it is provided therein that the national government, in close coordination with the LGUs through the respective leagues, shall formulate and pursue an institutional development program to support the LGUs and strengthen their capacities and capabilities to fully assume the devolved functions and services. Now, in the preparation of the NGA DTPs, Section 12 of the Implementing Rules and Regulations of EO number 138 directs the departments and agencies concerned to ensure that their devolution transition committees or their regional offices or field units are ready to respond to the LGU's requests and queries and ensure the alignment of national and regional objectives, as well as the implementation of the NGA and LGU DTPs. This also reiterated in Item 5.4 of the Joint Memorandum Circular issued in 2021 by the DBM and the DILG, prescribing the guidelines on the preparation of the NGA DTPs. So it could be highlighted that coordination between the NGAs concerned and the LGUs on matters pertaining to the full devolution effort has been undertaken. So basically, there is no dirt in policy when it comes to reminding the NGAs and LGUs to always coordinate in order to ensure to increase the likelihood of the alignment of their respective DTPs. Nonetheless, the NGAs concerned and the LGUs will be continually encouraged to utilize and strengthen the existing coordination mechanisms to aid in ensuring the alignment between their respective DTPs. Now, another key takeaway in this study is the guidance on the disaster risk reduction and management, or DRRM. In the study, DRRM-related programs, activities, and projects for devolution to provincial, municipal, and city governments include disaster prevention, mitigation, preparedness, rehabilitation, and recovery. But it is noted that in the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010, or Republic Act number 10121, it is emphasized the need for risk reduction and preparedness measures, and likewise mandates the creation of local disaster risk reduction and management offices in every province, city, and municipality. The under-identification of DRM-related functions in LGU DTPs could be attributed to several factors, and one of which is the limited capacity of the local government units to undertake disaster risk reduction and management-related functions. And of course, the varying interpretation of the concept of devolution of functions and services. In fact, under RA number 10121, both the national government and the local government units have their respective disaster risk reduction and management funds. For local government units, as the local officials here may very well know, you have your local disaster risk reduction and management fund mandated to be established or set aside out of the annual budget of the local governments. Now, in the case of the national government, we also have the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund. So this implies that disaster risk reduction and management activities is a shared responsibility between the national government and the local government units. So I think that should also be should have been noted in the study. So the NGAs concerned, particularly the member agencies of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, could be tapped to collaborate with the local governments and assist them in addressing data and capacity gaps to strengthen, coordinate, and further improve the delivery of disaster risk reduction and management related services. So relatedly, this could also be noted in the DPPs of the local government units. Now, another key takeaway is the target period of full devolution, particularly by 2024, which is the original time frame prescribed under EO number 138. So the findings of the study raised possible uncertainty on achieving full devolution by 2024. And this is one of the reasons why, as I have mentioned earlier, the assignment of responsibilities, programs, and projects between the national government and the local government units is currently being undertaken or reviewed to determine the need to extend the initial full devolution transition period and ensure the effective and efficient delivery of public services. Particularly, the nature and scope of the devolved functions and services vis-a-vis the capacities of the LGUs shall be taken into consideration in order to determine which are applicable to all LGUs and which could already be undertaken or implemented by the local government units. Thus, could already be fully devolved to the LGUs within the initial transition period, and those that require huge investments and highly specialized technical expertise, and those involving specific geographical areas. So this could be considered for a longer devolution transition period. So the findings of this study could serve as a strong basis in the current efforts to study the devolution of functions and services to the LGUs, which will be used in crafting the appropriate policy recommendations to the President to govern the full devolution effort. So we would like to emphasize the need to ensure a phased approach in the devolution strategies of both the national government and the local government units to ensure the smooth transition. Now, another key takeaway, the capacity development intervention for the local government units. In general, the assessment of the current state of the devolution of basic functions and services as represented in the LGU DPPs revealed the variations in the level of prioritization of LGUs on the devolved functions and services, which basically implied the varying capacities of the LGUs to implement these functions and services. Accordingly, it is to be highlighted that the national government's role to provide capacity development interventions for local government units has long been espoused, even before the effectivity of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas-Garcia case and the pursuit of full devolution effort under EO number 138. In fact, under the local government code, it is stipulated that the realization of local autonomy shall be facilitated through improved coordination of national government policies and programs and extension of adequate technical and material assistance to less developed and deserving LGUs. So this key finding of the study has indeed magnified the need to enhance the capacities of LGUs, not only in terms of technical aspect in the implementation of the devolved functions and services, but also through resource augmentation. This is why under existing policies and guidelines on the preparation of the 2024 national budget, and even in the preparation of the 2022 and 2023 national budget, we have emphasized the need for the national government agencies to prioritize the capacity and competency enhancing interventions in their budget proposals for those budget years. So following the issuance of EO number 138, the mechanisms for capacity development in the form of training and technical assistance, provision of additional financial support to the LGUs through the Growth Equity Fund, and the inclusion of options for the personnel of national government agencies that may be affected by devolution have been provided and will continue to be provided by the national government. Now, as to the recommendations on the annexes of the LGU DTPs, it is noted that the DBM and the ILG issued Joint Memorandum Circular Numbers 2021-1 and 2021-2, which prescribe, respectively, the guidelines for the preparation of the LGU DTPs and NGA DTPs. So given the findings of the study and the recent policy directives concerning the full devolution effort of the government, this could be an opportune time for both the DBM and the DILG to revisit these existing guidelines on the preparation of the DTPs, both at the national and local levels. So that is well noted po. Now, another recommendation, greater role of coordination. In addition to the findings in the study, it is noted that there have been several representations from the LGUs and LGU leagues that they are having difficulties in fully performing the devolved functions and services as they have committed in their respective DTPs. And these were brought about by several factors like the lack of technical and absorptive capacities and the limited consultations between the LGUs and the NGAs concerned in the preparation of the DTPs. Nevertheless, this could be, again, an opportune time for the NGAs concerned and the LGUs to reestablish or strengthen the coordination and align the devolution strategies to maximize the use of resources and ensure the smooth implementation of the devolution efforts. Now, with regard, again, another recommendation, not one size fits all. So this has been highlighted earlier by Congresswoman Alvarez and Governor Dascua, the peculiarities and varying capacities of LGUs. So the full devolution strategies of NGAs as contained in their DTPs are expected to consider these variations in the assignment of functions and responsibilities per level of LGU. So as I mentioned earlier, the ongoing study being conducted on the devolution of functions and services to LGUs will primarily take into consideration this noted varying absorptive capacities of LGUs vis-a-vis the nature and scope of the devolved functions and services in order to determine the more appropriate and effective policies to govern this full devolution effort. The way both the national and LGU DTPs are designed allows the LGUs to identify specific information on the performance, capacity, and needs that are unique to them. So as the national government agencies can provide specialized technical assistance to those LGUs with such intricacies. So the national government, as part of its steering functions, must be able to set the minimum standards of service delivery insofar as the devolved functions and services are concerned, to ensure the quality of public services and enhancement of citizen satisfaction. So this was also highlighted earlier by Governor Dax in his reaction. Another recommendation, mechanism for collection of baseline data for monitoring and evaluation. With regard to the study being reliant on the ability and thoroughness of the LGU representatives in accomplishing the DTP forms, may we also add that, as mentioned in the study, the LGU DTPs are designed as the LGU's self-assessment on their respective state of implementation of devolved functions and services, the local revenue forecast, and resource mobilization strategy, among others. So, aside from the issues on the ability and thoroughness of the LGU representatives in accomplishing the DTP forms, as elaborated in Chapter 4 of the study, it is worth noting that some LGUs could misinterpret the full devolution effort as a move of the national government to completely surrender the technical and financial responsibilities of the delivery of devolved functions and services. So there could be an apprehension for the LGUs to confidently or accurately state their respective actual capabilities in their respective DTPs. As such, the importance of having robust and results-based monitoring and evaluation systems in the NGAs concerned could likewise be reiterated in order to have other reliable basis on the true status and performance of the LGUs with regard to the devolved functions and services. Also, the importance of strengthening the vertical and horizontal linkages across the different levels of government in development planning, investment programming, and budgeting to ensure the alignment of national, regional, and local priorities is also emphasized. So this was also highlighted and pursued by the government even prior to the devolution effort and reiterated in EO number 138. Also, the establishment of a results-based monitoring and evaluation system in the oversight agencies like the DBM, DILG, DOF, NEDA, as well as in the other NGAs is directed to ensure the purposive conduct of evaluation by the agencies concerned and to guarantee that the LGUs have assumed the devolved functions and services effectively in support of good governance, transparency, accountability, and evidence-based decision-making. So as I have mentioned earlier, I will also take this opportunity to share the DBM's initiatives and programs to facilitate the successful administrative and fiscal decentralization to the local governments. The DBM is currently undertaking efforts to align its public financial management programs with its mandates under EO number 138. So in line with this, the DBM, under the leadership of Secretary Amena Pangandaman, created a technical working group for capacity development interventions towards full devolution. So starting August 2023, the technical working group slated to conduct PFM competency program training for local government units. So this training essentially aims to promote good governance, financial accountability, and effective resource management among local government institutions. So it shall also include a special track on empowering LGUs to transition to full devolution. Also, one of the key features of the EO number 138 is the establishment of the Growth Equity Fund, which is intended to address the problem of marginalization, unequal development, high poverty incidence, and disparities in the net fiscal capacities of local government units. So this is an additional financial assistance which is to be given to the identified poor, disadvantaged, and lagging local government units. So in identifying the poor, disadvantaged, and lagging local government units, the DBCC prescribed several criteria, and one of which is the net per capita national tax allotment shares of LGUs for the particular year when the Growth Equity Fund was appropriated in the GAA, the poverty incidence, and the income bracket based on the latest income of the local government units. The 2022 Growth Equity Fund has already been released by the DBM to the identified poor, disadvantaged, and lagging local government units. But for 2023, given that there is still an ongoing study and since we have yet to determine the other criteria that may be taken into consideration in the allocation of the Growth Equity Fund for 2023, the DBM has not yet issued the guidelines on the release and utilization of the 2023 Growth Equity Fund. But rest assured that the DBM, as soon as it has identified the necessary criteria, will issue the guidelines and immediately release the funds to the LGUs. The last part of my reaction is the sharing of insights on how to address the challenges in the full devolution of functions to the LGUs. To optimize or maximize the additional resources that the LGUs have started to receive in line with the effectivity of the Mandanas Garcia ruling, it is imperative for the local government units in partnership with the national government agencies concerned to continue the implementation of the devolved basic services and functions as mandated under the local government code and other pertinent laws. So with the increase in the NTA shares of LGUs, they are now in a better position to perform these devolved functions and services to ensure undistracted delivery of services to the people. In the implementation of the devolved functions and services, the LGUs should consider the service delivery standards set by the national government and establish performance measures and mechanisms and, of course, their own context. Second is to ensure appropriate pacing of the devolution transition strategies. So we emphasize that an appropriate pacing of the devolution transition strategy, as well as the assignment of functions or responsibilities in the different components of the programs, activities, and projects for devolution to the LGUs, should also be considered in the crafting of the DTPs of both the national government agencies and the LGUs. Factors such as the nature and scope of the devolved functions and services, the absorptive technical and financial capacities of LGUs, economies of scales or of scale, among others, should also be considered in determining the appropriate timing of the devolution strategies. Third is to enhance the LGU capacity to undertake the devolved functions and services. I think we cannot overemphasize the importance of capacitating the local government units. And this was further highlighted in EO number 138. In fact, in EO number 138, we have identified the Local Government Academy, the Development Academy of the Philippines, and the Bureau of Local Government Finance to be at the forefront in capacitating the local government units based on the respective mandates. And of course, on the part of the oversight agencies, the DBM will continue to provide technical assistance to LGUs in the area of public financial management, particularly in planning, budgeting, expenditure management, and procurement, and the DILG on how to run the local government units, the NEDA when it comes to planning and alignment of the LGU devolution, transition plans and development plans and investment programs with the national goals and objectives, particularly those that have been highlighted in the Philippine Development Plan. Then the Bureau of Local Government Finance when it comes to local revenue generation. So we have the PLGF, which diligently renders technical assistance to LGUs on revenue generation and resource mobilization. Fourth is to strengthen the collaboration and partnership with the national government, other LGUs, and other stakeholders. So this can be realized through the integration of local programs and policies with the common national goal set forth under the PDP 2023 to 2028 to align the national, regional, and local priorities and ensure the attainment of the country's collective vision of matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay. Then the consolidation or coordination of efforts and resources across the different levels of local governments for projects that may be commonly beneficial for them, like those that require significant amount of resources or high technical expertise, or those that cut across different jurisdictions. Third is the adoption of a whole-of-government approach in the delivery of basic services and facilities, which recognizes the pivotal role of the civil society organizations, the private sector, and other stakeholders as active partners in the pursuit of effective local governance and autonomy. And finally, the adoption of an effective communication strategy to generate support, correct misconceptions, and ensure the alignment of the devolution efforts among all stakeholders. So I think that's the end of my reaction. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Director Aries Makaspak, for that your comprehensive comments on the study, as well as for updating us on the initiatives and programs of the DBM to facilitate successful administrative and fiscal decentralization as far as the full devolution is concerned. At this point, friends, before we go to the open forum, our authors may have something to say in response to the remarks of our discussants. Marianne or Ricxie, you may want to say something with regards to the comments, please. Marianne, please go ahead.
Okay, once again, we would like to thank our discussants for the very insightful comments made on our presentation, and we thank you for acknowledging the recommendations and the key insights made by the study. We would like to stress that to keep the study evidence-based, we restrain from making judgment calls on interpreting certain data, and that is why some recommendations and findings are limited only specifically to what was presented in the data. But overall, thank you once again for your time and participating in our webinar.
Thank you, Marianne. And Ricxie, would you have anything to add? Please.
Yes, Ma'am Sheila. Thank you. Thank you for making time, as what Ms. Marianne said a while ago, and also for giving your insights for our results. And yes, there's still lot of studies that we still need to do, and this is just the first step, and that's it. So thank you.
Okay.
So,
Thank you to our presenters. And at this point, let us look at the questions on our Q&A box. Some of them have been answered already by our speakers, but we can go back to them because your answers are not visible to our Facebook participants. So let me pick some questions. And this one, we have an interesting question here from Miss Ivory Galang who is from PIDS. He asked, do we need to wait for all LGUs to become ready for devolution? Or phasing of devolution that is advanced / capacitated LGUs will go first, while other LGUs undergo further capacitation, be a better option? If we choose the phase implementation, wouldn't this increase the inequality among LGUs? This question, everyone is welcome to answer this question, but perhaps we can ask ULA President Governor Dax first, and then we can go to the rest of our speakers. Governor Dax.
Thank you, Ma'am Sheila. So it's a very good question. We don't want to further disenfranchise some LGUs in the process of our transition. That's why in our proposal of ULAP, it is really our idea that it's best to redefine the transition method vis-a-vis the current way we have been used to doing it. The main idea behind it is to really have an honest dialogue between and among different levels of government, identify key functions, put them in context of scale and scope, so that we know which level of government will be best to handle which level of the process in the service delivery. So in that sense, makikita na rin natin which LGs are lagging behind, no? Not by their own desire, but really just lack of resources or contextual reasons, no? Na very remote area, very depressed, high poverty, very isolated, and many other possible reasons. But once we have a real analysis of what the capacity is and what the goal is in terms of service delivery, mas madaling i-map out sinong gagawa ng alin function, what level of government. For example, ang usual na pinag-uusapan ko is waste, no? Obviously, when it comes to waste segregation, no one is best or better equipped than the barangay. Kasi nandun sila talaga. They have more people. They're on the ground. They can talk to the group leaders. They can talk to the homeowners. Barangay talaga. But when it comes to collection, I think it's obviously the mayors who have the capacity to buy the trucks, mobilize resources in that sense. No? But when it comes to waste disposal management, waste to energy, that's really the provincial government. And kung kulang pa nga yung pera ng provincial government, that's where national government can come in. When we delineate the function and where the baton will be passed from one level of LGU to the next, we can clearly determine accountability and responsibility. And we can easily measure readiness of LGUs. We can easily determine what type of support, supplemental or complementary support we can provide which level of LGU. So that's why we have been trying to advocate, let's redefine the way we approach things instead of the usual, okay, baba na ito, bahala na kayo, gawin nyo yan. Let's really have an honest dialogue. What is the target service delivery and what level of LGU should be taking it on? Or is it a collaboration among levels of local governments? Therefore, once we have an honest analysis of capacity, scale, scope, capability, then we can really have hopefully a more efficient delivery of public services. At the end of the day, it's really about how well we deliver the service to the Filipino people.
Thank you very much, Governor Dax. No, speaking of that honest dialogue, have there been efforts to make this happen either by ULAP or by the DBM? No, kasi we're halfway through 2023, and the complete devolution target is 2024. We based on the results of the study, makikita natin na that complete devolution is not feasible by 2024. So I think we need to act fast, no? And so sir, meron na bang efforts for that sinasabi natin na kailangan na honest dialogue between both parties and with other stakeholders as well?
So yes, right now we've been working with with the DILG. So DILG and the ULAP has been closely coordinating to develop the framework. And then we've already started collaborating with a few national government agencies. And we've, for example, DOH can be one of the first ones we will discuss with. And with this, we will be able to find out what are the services to be delivered, and we can start mapping out. No, it will be a very tedious process. Honestly, we can imagine how many functions there are, services that the people need, and how we will map out across different levels. But I think it's a long overdue process. We need to do it. We can't simply say, sabi ng batas, gawin natin kahit wala tayong pera. Tapos, nagduduplicate ang functions ng probinsya at munisipyo at barangay. Tapos, ang daming overlap, ang dami pang gap, at hindi natin alam. So what happens is, we end up pointing fingers at each other. Now, we end up pointing, kasalanan yung national kasi ganyan. Hindi kasi si province, hindi niya ginawa yung role niya because it's not clearly defined. It's poorly designed. And one key takeaway is to have a well-designed system based on actual capabilities, or if not, at least the target capability of each level of governance structure. So, I hope I somehow clarify the position of ULAP, but we've been working on it. I think what's important here is the process has started, and we work towards a common shared vision of service delivery.
That's right. Thank you very much, Governor Dax. And I think I saw Congresswoman Alvarez on our meeting, still on our meeting room. Ma'am, would you like to say something with regards to this question, ma'am? We greatly appreciate your input.
Well, I think the goal right now is really to extend the devolution period. And not to suspend it entirely until all LGUs are ready. Of course, we all know that devolution is a long process. In some countries, like for example in the UK, their devolution process had been like a 5-decade long process. So it won't happen overnight. This will definitely take some time. And I actually feel more for municipalities, poor municipalities that are, I mean, can you imagine if rich cities in Luzon or big provinces are actually having a hard time with this devolution? What more for this poor municipalities? So I really think maybe if the DILG or the national government can think of extending the time period and really putting into like a specialized department or a part of a department that can really focus on this, because we all know that everybody is so and ito yung funny sa mga, especially sa mga LGUs natin, parang aside from functioning in this particular office, they have to do other things to comply for the devolution requirements. So minsan medyo confused na rin silang lahat. So I think it's more, I'm not in favor of suspending it or just stopping it because everybody's not ready. I think it's more of extending the period so that others can actually comply.
Thank you very much. And I may have a follow-up question, Congresswoman Alvarez, no? Can you share any legislation, any laws proposed in Congress that would really help in this full devolution? Baka may gusto kayong i-share, ma'am.
I don't have the particular bills right now or the list, but I can actually furnish PIDS a copy of it later on. But I know there are some bills that would like to revisit.
Okay.
There are big bills that very ambitious bills that would like to revisit the whole local government code, who would like to revamp the whole local government code. But I don't know if that is possible with the time left for us. We only have like 2 more years to go in this term for this Congress. And there are also other bills that focuses on certain, of course, we all know, actually yung question po nga na if we are in favor of devolution is quite wrong because in the first place, we don't have, it's not like we don't have a choice, but it's already a given. It's already
a given, yeah.
Yeah, it's already
We have the local government code since 1991.
Mandating us to decentralize certain functions. So I think there are bills that would like us to revisit certain provisions so that this devolution process would be more easier and would be more practical for some LGUs, especially the poor ones.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Alvarez. Okay, let's go to other questions from our audience. And okay, we have an interesting question here from Jane Homarl of the LGU of Lingayen, Pangasinan. Given the complete devolution of function, services, and facilities from the national government to local government units, coupled with the findings of this study, a pertinent question arises: is the current structure of our political system well suited to meet the needs of our evolving society? It's a bit difficult question, but worth considering, worth taking a crack on. So may I ask for the inputs of our answer of our speakers, please? Anyone who would like to answer this? Okay, perhaps we can park this question for now. Marianne, would you like to take a crack at this question, please?
No, I would just like to say that it's out of the scope of our study, and
okay,
maybe would like to pass this on to our co-panelists.
It's okay. Governor Dax, would you like to say anything?
That is a long debate to take on about changing our constitution and form of government. Maybe there's not enough time.
Yes, we can reserve it for some other time when the topic of the webinar is really about related to political economy, okay, or to politics. Okay, let us go to a question from Gaynor Tanyang, which I think has been answered already on Zoom, but for the benefit of our Facebook participants, please answer it again. What was the fiscal function also studied in the research, such as capacity to source funds, including taxation, loans, and partnerships? And I think, Marianne, you already answered this. Please.
Yes, so the study mainly used the DTPs, data from the DTPs, as the sole source of data. Now, if we want to look at the fiscal devolution, we would need to have LGU level consolidated fiscal indicators, such as what would we look into: revenue creation, budget and planning methods or capacity, and also external sources for funds, which at the moment there's no LGU level consolidated data for this. So because of the lack of the data, we were not able to include this in the study, but we also recommend that for future studies, there must be a mechanism for data gathering, for monitoring and evaluation.
Okay, thank you for that, Marianne. And we have a question here, and perhaps Director Macaspa can answer this, from Ronald Alan Pacana. May I ask how He wants to know how we can reconcile the problem on the harmonization or lack thereof of DTPs of NGAs and LGUs. During the NGA-LGU forum on devolution conducted in their region, I think he is from Region 1, it was found out that the DTPs of LGUs and NGAs are not in harmony at all. Some LGUs want to assume functions that are not yet devolved by the NGAs. And on the top of this, the quality of the DTP submitted by the LGUs are questionable given the time frame given by the ILG. Most of the LGUs contain the same DTPs despite having different realities. Given this, what are the possible steps that the National ComDev can do to expedite or reconcile the situation? Also, there are offices that are considered optional based from the OSSP for the LGUs, yet the NGA DTP is one of the two only NGAs with approved DTPs. Okay, that was his long question slash comment. Director Makaspak, please.
Yes, actually, there are a couple of questions included sa item na to, no? But I would just like to answer first with regard to the reconciliation or increase in the harmony or synchronization of the NGA and LGU devolution transition plans. When we first issued the implementing guidelines of EO number 138, particularly the Joint Memorandum Circulars on the preparation of the NGA and LGU DTPs, we have emphasized therein the need for the LGUs to coordinate with the national government agencies concerned, particularly with the field and regional offices of these NGAs, to somehow increase the likelihood of the harmonization between the respective devolution transition plans. The local government units did not have to wait for the approval of the NGA DTPs. Even the initially prepared NGA DTPs could already serve as basis in the preparation of the LGU DTPs that will include the particular programs, projects, and activities that they want to include therein, consistent with the devolved functions and services. So here, I think the key is coordination between the national government and local government units. Kahit hindi yan gustong implement the local government unit, they still have to include the same in their DTP, but they just have to include therein the reason why they cannot implement yet that program within the particular time frame, but they have to include it in their DTP because it's part of their devolved function and of their devolved functions and services. So coordination po between the national government agencies and the local government units is one of the keys. Now another is what are the possible steps that the Committee on Devolution can do? Well, the National ComDev naman is both represented by the national government and the local government units, and all the presidents of the leagues of LGUs are members, including, of course, Governor Daxcua as the president of the ULAP. So whatever challenges or reservations that the LGUs have in the implementation of the devolution, they can always elevate it to the Committee on Devolution for the ComDev to resolve or provide solutions to those identified by the LGUs as problem in the implementation of the devolved functions. Now, with regard to the last question, there are offices that are considered optional based from the OSSP for LGUs and the NGA DTPs 1. So ano yung ibig sabihin dito? Parang optional lang sila for LGUs, but they are required in the NGA DTPs to be created. Is that what you are saying here? Well, for the creation naman kasi of offices and positions in the LGUs, we have to take note that the LGUs have autonomy. Diba? As much as possible, we want to limit the number of mandatory positions in order not to diminish the leeway and flexibility given to the local government units under the local government code. In fact, pag merong mandatory creation of a position or office na nile-legislate sa Congress, we are one of those that are opposing yung ganong mga policy. Why? Because it somehow diminishes the flexibility given to the LGUs, because a position while it is needed in many LGUs, may not be applicable to all. So if you mandate all local government units to create this position, at hindi naman nila yan kailangan, ano mangyari sa position na yan? So why not give them the leeway and flexibility to create the positions which they deemed are necessary, to carry out the functions and services which their LGUs mandated to deliver. So yun po yung sagot ko lang doon. For those mandated under the law, I think we have here Congresswoman Alvarez. So pwede po yan tingnan din sa Congress siguro. Particularly yung mga talagang nire-require na i-create ng local government units na hindi naman applicable sa lahat.
Okay. Maraming salamat, Director Magkaspak. And we have a question here, and I think this is for our presenters or our authors. And this one is from, okay, Zarex Hitosis. He wants our speakers to further elaborate on their findings between the devolved functions and the ERA. He said, I understand that LGU income class was part of the scope and limitation of the study, but he is curious to know how directly impactful is the income class to the devolution. I think he was referring to that slide wherein you mentioned that there is a weak correlation between the number of devolved PPAs and the average 2019 to 2021 era, meaning okay, the richer LGUs may not necessarily have more devolved PPAs or more devolved functions. Marianne, please.
Yes, so for that slide, because first we noticed a variation in the number of devolved functions per LGU. And so in the DTPs, it's silent as to the reason why some LGUs have identified more devolved functions and some have less. So for that slide, just using the overall picture, we wanted to test a hypothesis as to what would be or what is the driver for the high number of devolved functions for certain LGUs. So it was just to test whether maybe it's being driven by ERA, or LGUs with a high budget may be more active in assuming more devolved functions. And so when we tested for that relationship, we found very low or weak correlations. So that's basically, so it was a test of hypothesis in finding out what is the rationale or what's driving the number of devolved functions being assumed by our LGUs.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marianne. So let's go to other questions from our audience. Okay, this is kind of okay. It's a general question. What is the most limiting factor for the implementation of the devolution transition plans, and how can LGUs address these limitations? I think we have touched on the need for capacity building, etc. But you may want to answer this, Director Aries, and we can go to Director Kua as well, please.
Yes, thank you, Doc Sheila. I would before I answer this question, I would like to supplement what Ms. Juco mentioned about the income classification.
Yes.
So the question may be pertaining to whether or not we consider the income class of LGUs in identifying the particular function or service to be devolved.
To be devolved.
Well, to answer the question, hindi naman po. First, one of the reasons why we cannot do that is it is not provided under the local government code. What is delineated under the local government code are the functions and services based on level of LGU and not based on income. So can we use income as basis? Other than the fact that it is not provided under the local government code, the income classification is updated already. The last income classification was done in 2008, and it's already very outdated, and it's no longer reflective of the actual financial capacity of the local government units. Although in the recent list of priority measures identified by the LEDAC, the passage of the income classification bill is one of those identified priorities. So we are very hopeful that the law will already be passed and ratified by Congress and be approved by the President, hopefully this year, for us to have a basis, an updated basis in determining the financial capacity of the local government units. Now, to answer yung question kanina, what are the other reasons? Well, as we have noted, yung technical, no? On the financial aspect, I think one of the reasons why the LGUs had this difficulty in implementing the devolved functions and services within the original time frame is the significant reduction in the 2023 NTA shares of LGUs, which is an effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Because the 2023 level of NTA was based on the national taxes collected in 2020. Basically, that was the height of the pandemic. So there were restrictions on the mobility of the general public and limitations on the economic activities, which consequently affected the collections of revenues by the government. So that's one reason. No, other than of course yung mga other factors. I don't know if it is right to attribute the transition in the local administration last year because of the elections. But those that were already identified in the initial DTPs that they have prepared were revised or modified by the newly elected officials. So that could also be one of the factors, yung continuity in the implementation of the programs and projects that they have identified in the initial DTPs prepared by the previous sets of local officials.
Thank you very much, Director Aries. And may we go to Governor Dax, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Sir, can you mention the question again?
The question pertains to what is the most limiting, actually ang inano niya, most limiting challenge or factor that constrains this devolution agenda, and what can we do to address them? So perhaps we do not just limit on the most limiting, but the subset of, the universe of those limiting factors po.
Ma'am, if I may react in a general sense of how we appreciate in all of the situation. In 1992, the local government code was enacted, and since then there were enumerated functions to be devolved to local governments: healthcare, social services, agriculture, etc. So nakalista po yan lahat kung anong gagawin ng local government. At that time, in 1992, for example, the provinces were not ready to suddenly absorb the management of all hospitals. So at that time, nag-struggle, hindi ready, hindi handa. Kaya na-mismanage yung healthcare system. Back in 1992, many people died in the process because of poor transition. No? And then, throughout the years, since 1992, nakita natin that there were a lot of devolved functions left unfunded. Obviously, because each LGU has their own priorities. Some were very fully absorbed by the local governments. Some functions were done better by one set of LGUs, while others concentrated on other functions like social services. Yung mga agricultural provinces, the LGU stepped up, di ba? So makikita mo kasi nandun ang priority ng community. That's why the LGU responds to the needs of the community, di ba? So kung dito sa probinsya ko, agricultural kami, makikita mo some of the resources talagang nakabuhos sa agriculture, di ba? Kung dito sa depressed yung healthcare services, makikita mo the LGU steps up in that field, no? So here comes 2021, 2019, 2020. A decision is given by the Supreme Court. Hey, teka, maling computation. LGUs, you deserve a bigger share. So here comes the bigger share, right? So the situation does not change because the LGUs still have their own peculiar priorities, right? So how do we now transition? See, now we're asking national government agencies, NGAs, 20 of them or more. They're saying, ito priorities namin, gawin nyo lahat to. So ililista na naman nila yan. Di ba? So si LGU, syempre, hindi na naman magkakasya na i-fund niya lahat nung ililista ng national government. So the same thing will happen all over again. So that's why, although it is not wrong, it is an exercise in the right direction, we see that we need to really have an honest to goodness talk. Ano ba talaga ang gagawin? Because the LGU has their own priorities and it is not incorrect. The LGUs are responding to the needs as demanded by their constituents and trying to fulfill services that are required by the community. So I hope that's where DBM, NEDA, national government can come together and realize that the solution is really to determine the basic service delivery. And once we determine that, we can now plan uh, towards the proper uh, rationalization of functions, and then we can transition into what we call devolution. But it all has to be anchored on service delivery. And then yung mga kamalian na ginawa natin noon, we need the support of Congresswoman Alvarez and Congress and Senate, of course, na yung mga redundancy, tanggalin na natin, di ba? At yung mga gaps, ituro na natin, ito trabaho mo to, kapitan, ito trabaho mo, mayor, ito governor, sa'yo to. Hindi mo pwedeng ipasa yung blame. This is all. So once we do that, we will hopefully have a more accountable, responsive, and superior services that will be delivered to the Filipino people. Sorry po, yun yung ano ko po, yun yung hugot ko po sa ating proseso.
Thank you, Governor Dax. And I think it's important to recognize that income is not always a limiting factor, no? When it comes to delivering better public services, because we have seen low-income class municipalities that were given the seal of local good governance, no? May mga awards pa sila. So it boils down partly also to leadership, no? Malaking bagay din yung leadership. At meron kaming naging forum, Governor Dax, wherein you shared, no? The experience of your LGU when it comes to overcoming challenges, no? In terms of revenues, just so to deliver good services to the public. So hindi laging rason yung walang resources. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And also it is important to mention that itong EO 138 hindi naman siya nagbibigay ng additional, yung sa full devolution, hindi siya nagbibigay ng additional responsibilities. These are already, di ba, Director Makaspak, these are already devolved functions noon pa, but still being assumed, still being performed by NGAs, by national government agencies. So tama, it's important na talagang maayos natin paano nga ba itong nitty-gritty nitong full devolution process. Sige po, Governor
Sheila.
Dax.
Yeah, I just wanted to appreciate the work done by PIDS, no, the research, because it amalgamates the data. It gives us an insight to what the priorities of the regions are, the nuances of the DPPs of the different LGUs by municipalities, provinces, cities, and barangays. So this, I think, will be helpful in our plan towards service delivery oriented framework, because makikita natin din sa DPP sa national government kung anong priority ni national government to bring down to the LGU. Tapos makikita naman natin sinong LGUs or regions ang medyo inclined to absorb these functions. And then mamamatch natin. This is a necessary step towards what we're all trying to do. Perhaps we all have the same goal, but it's a different ways of getting there. But I think this is a necessary step, and I'd like to commend lang the researchers that did the work, and really quality work.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw a question here on our Q&A box, and unfortunately hindi ko na siya makita ngayon, but this is for you, Director Aries Makaspak, because you mentioned in your talk that there's this plan by the DBM to do an impact study yata of and this but of course, it will come later because we're talking of an impact study. But in terms, sir, of yung what is the DBM currently doing, no, in terms of, let's say, monitoring the performance of our LGUs, or getting evidence on the ground in terms of the progress of this devolution.
Yes, I think the impact assessment will not be done by the DBM unilaterally. Will have to be done jointly with the other oversight agencies, and the same will have to be verified and confirmed by the local government units then. No? So for the impact assessment, the DBM presently we have what we call as the Public Financial Management Assessment Tool, which is a self-diagnostic tool that determines the level of compliance of LGUs with the several facets of budgeting and expenditure management. So we have that Public Financial Management Assessment tool. It's in electronic form na kino-comply naman ng local government units. On the part of the DILG, they have, of course, the very prestigious Seal of Good Local Governance. And then they also have, I think they still are implementing yung LGPMS nila. And then the LGF PMS in the case of the BLGF, or the Score ng Bayan. The submission of reports by the LGUs to the local by the local treasurers, particularly to the local bureau of the DOF, the Bureau of Local Government Finance, yung statement of receipts and expenditures, which basically are also indicative of the financial standing of the LGUs. And of course, on the part of the national government agencies, then that's a critical aspect of the steering functions of the national government agencies. The performance monitoring over the local government units is one of the key components of the respective DPPs, and it should be implemented. So sabi ko nga, this is not a unilateral function of the DBM. It should be done jointly with the oversight agencies and all other frontline agencies in the DBM.
Because if we take a look at the Committee on Devolution, while it is chaired by the DBM, by your agency, co-chaired by the DILG, may mga members siya from the different government agencies. No? Okay. Maraming salamat, Director Makaspak. I am going through the remaining questions on our Q&A box. Well, some of them are okay, some of them are just remarks, and okay, and actually most of the questions on our from our audience have already been answered. So if you would like to know the full study, I mean the comprehensive results, no, just download the study from our website. So at this point, to cap our discussion, I'd like to ask our speakers from some brief parting words, if you have any. So can we start with our presenters, Marianne and Ricxie, and then we'll go to the rest of our speakers after you. Please, Marianne. Hi, Marianne. Or Ricxie. Okay, Marianne, please.
All right. Once again, thank you to all our partners, especially DILG, for helping us organize this webinar, and thank you to our distinguished panel for all their insights. Basically, the study is a picture of what is currently devolved. And so we understand that there are a lot of questions arising from this, like why are these the functions that are devolved? What should be, or what is the quality of the current devolved functions? And these questions we can explore in future studies, but we thank DILG for allowing us to use the database of the DTPs. It's a very, I think this is the first presentation or first view of how the devolution has come about so far. And so we thank you again, everyone, for your attention to this presentation.
Thank you very much, Marianne. And Ms. Ricxie, would you have anything to add? On
Yes,
behalf of the PIDS team, yes.
Yes. Thank you very much for our partners at what Miss Marianne mentioned. Of course, DIG, thank you very much. And of course, our discussants for this afternoon. Also, I think I just want to give some remarks that I know that Philippine devolution effort has made significant strides in promoting participatory governance, empowering local government units, and enhancing local economic development. This government still needs to strengthen the intergovernmental coordination by exploring different strategies for effective coordination between the national and the local government. So since we know that this devolution transition, it is important for the national government to continuously provide guidance and support to LGUs to ensure the effective delivery of services and development programs. That's it po, Ma'am Sheila. Thank you po.
Maraming salamat din, Ricxie, and also to Mariam and to your co-authors. And at this point, may I call on Congressman Alvarez. Ma'am, would you have anything to say as your parting words to our audience?
I cannot help but, overemphasize the importance of collaboration. Local governments, the national government should always partner with think tanks or research arms, such as, of course, our very own PIDS. Because we must really maximize their expertise, especially in terms of data gathering and analysis. So on behalf of the House of Representatives, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I am looking forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And may we hear from ULE President Governor Dax Cuba. Sir, please.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here, and I would also like to thank PIDS for the great work they've done together with the DILG and the CPBRT, and it's really a challenging process, and we thank you all, especially Congresswoman Alvarez, for championing the cause of local government units, and of course we're here to serve the people, and therefore devolution, I think, is necessary, but if done in a proper, planned, and scientific way, can really lead to better services to our people. So maraming salamat again, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon din po, sir. And finally, of course, may we hear from Director Aries Makaspak of the DBM.
Dakila, thank you. What can I say? I would like to thank and congratulate the PIDS for conducting this event. So, as the Philippine government's primary socioeconomic policy think tank, the policy-oriented studies of the PIDS will be of great use for policy makers, including those under the executive branch like the DBM, the DILG, in order to ensure that the policies that we make and prepare are inclusive and responsive to the needs of the LGUs and of their respective communities and constituents. So thank you, and to all the participants po, thank you for attending this, and I hope that you learned something from the sessions. Now, and rest assured that the DBM will always be ready to provide any technical assistance that you need. Sa financial, hindi ko makukommit lahat because we are always working on a very limited fiscal space, as you may very well know. With that, thank you very much po, and may God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Director Aries, and thank you to all our guests. Friends, please join me in thanking them through a big virtual clap. And we also appreciate your active participation in the poll and also in the open forum. We hope that our discussion today answered most of your questions and regarding the full devolution process that is in progress. And we also hope that the PIDS study presented today and the insights shared by our speakers help our policymakers and program implementers refine the various programs and policies related to the full devolution for the benefit of our local government units. So maraming salamat po. And here are the winners of our webinar raffle. Okay, for those of you who are joining us the first time, you may We may wonder about this raffle. Well, every week, whenever we have a webinar, we usually randomly pick winners, names from among our Zoom participants and Facebook viewers. So and we give the winners a prize as a token of our appreciation. So our winners from Facebook are Maria R. Bonacqua of CDRRMO of Binyan, Laguna, and from Zoom, Marisa Ragador of the City Government of Dasmariñas, and also from Zoom, Alan Cicerio of the Caloocan Sangguniang Panglungsod. So Miss Maria, Miss Marisa, and Alan, our webinar team will get in touch with you for the delivery of your prize. And finally, we have some reminders. You can access all the presentations from today's webinar on the PIDS website, including the study of our PIDS authors, which is available as a PIDS discussion paper. Please answer the feedback survey that will pop on your screen after the webinar. Your comments are important to us to improve our seminars. Please regularly visit our website and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We also have a YouTube channel where you can access the recordings of all our events. And we have 2 more webinars this month. On next week, July 20, we will have our webinar on Act Now or Pay Later, Enhancing Disaster Risk Governance for a Resilient Philippines. This is our contribution to the celebration of National Disaster Risk Reduction Month. And on July 27, we will have our webinar with the Innovations for Poverty Action on Transforming Education in the Philippines, Insights and Innovations. These are on Zoom, and you can also watch the live stream on Facebook. And please watch out for the registration details, which we will announce on our Facebook page. And finally, we would like to acknowledge the various organizations from the government, academia, civil society, business, and international development community that join us today, including our friends from the media. So this concludes our virtual policy forum. Again, our sincerest thanks to all our guests and participants on Zoom and Facebook for your active participation. And we sincerely thank also our event partners, the CPBRD or the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department of the House of Representatives, and the Department of the Interior and Local Government. Maraming salamat po, and we hope that you'll join us again in our forthcoming events. Thank you and have a good day.